Okay, so I'm going to just start with a new file here. And we'll go File, New. And again, this may look a little different depending on the version you're working with. Basically, I just want to start with a standard size 640 by 480. Make sure, this is important, that you're on ActionScript 3 for this exercise. And then click Create. And you know what? Right away, I'm going to do a Save As. And I've got a folder here called Animate Course, so I'll just call this Lesson 01. Save. Okay. Actually, you should save yours with your last name underscore 01. Now I'm just going to set up my basic structure on the main timeline here. You notice I had 4 sections. Excuse me. I'm going to start just by creating actions. Another new layer. Actually, I'll be dragging these down, I guess. Let's see, I'll call this one Labels. And then I'll drag one below there and I'll call it Content. And we'll create another one below that and call it Menu. Okay, and let me just compare that to my original. There we go. Actions, Labels, Content, Menu. And you see here, I don't need to give it all this space. It could be done on 4 frames, but I do span it out just so it's easier to see and you can actually read my frame labels, which is better for demonstration. But in theory, this could be done on the first 4 frames. Okay, I am going to spread mine out as you see here in the finished file. So let's just span these all out. I think they went to, let me go back here, to frame 40. And I can do that by dragging downwards, clicking and dragging downwards, and F5 is the shortcut for spans. So now I'm guaranteed that all of these things are spanning. And on frame 10, I'm going to keyframe the labels layer, and that's an F6, as well as the content layer, but not the menu layer. Okay, so we're going to keyframe labels and content together. So on frame 20, I guess I'm going 10 frames down here. I can shift click these or click and drag downwards. F6 to create keyframes. I need to hit the right button on the keyboard. And then on frame 30, same idea here. F6 to create keyframes. Now these are all empty right now, but I'm going to start by putting my frame labels in. So highlighting the keyframe on the labels layer, I go up to my properties and I'll just call this one home. I'm going to use all lowercase. First one, I think, just to stick to the program, I'll call it song, then video, then contact. Okay. So song. As long as your names make sense to you to help it easier to understand what you're working on. I could have said page 1, 2, and 3, I suppose, but this is actually more descriptive. And being more clear is always better. Alright, so the last one here we will call contact. Okay, and definitely should save. Alright, so my structure as far as the timeline is concerned is pretty well done. Let's see, why don't I put some quick text labels up in the top right corner. I could put those on the content layer. I could put them on the labels layer. You know what? I think I'm going to put them on the content layer. So I'm going to select the first frame in content. Go to my text tool. I'm going to do area text, which is click and drag. And I'll just type in the word home. Format that, double click it. Verdana, I'm going to stick with the defaults here, but I think I'll make it a little bit bigger. 18, I guess, and maybe a little bit brighter with some color. So click on the fill, and we'll make it red. Click away, there we go. Now I'm going to copy and paste in place on these next ones so that it assumes the same location. Edit, copy. Go to the next place here, the next keyframe, paste in place. Double click that and just change that to the word song. Go to the next keyframe, edit, paste in place. Double click. We'll call this one video. Oh, don't hit your enter key. You can hit your tab key, I believe. No, just click away or select another tool. Anyhow, we'll click on the first keyframe under contact, edit, paste in place. Just edit that text once again, contact, and definitely save again. Okay, so now I have at least a way to know which page I'm on. And I will start on the menu layer and create that menu down here. So I'm just going to use my text tool. And I'll just type in the word main menu. I believe that's what I called it. Yes. I will stylize it with 2 styles and 2 colors, if you will, just to get fancy here. Main menu. Okay. And let me double click that. And I will format it to be, let's see, under paragraph. I'm going to format it to align left. And then just drag that out here a bit. There we go. Okay, so let me change this to regular and black. Okay, so I've got main menu right there. Now it's just text, but I want to turn this into a button. And then after I make it into a button, I'm going to embed that into a movie clip, and that's where most of the action will take place. I could have done that in either order. I could have made it a movie clip first and then did the button creation and so on. It does even out at the end of the process. So I'm going to just highlight that, modify, convert to symbol. We'll say button, and I'll call it menu. I'll call it main menu. Main menu. Underscore BTN. Actually, I'm going to leave the underscore out because this is the library name. I'll use the underscore for the instance name. So main menu, okay. So now it's a button. I'm just going to go into it and give it a mouse over feature. So I'll keyframe the overstate, F6, and just change some of the characteristics here. So I think I'll make this italic, if I can. Yes, I can. There we go. And maybe just regular. You know, I think I'll keep it bold now that I look at it. And this is just an artistic decision here. So italic, bold. I'm sure we have that. Bold, italic. There we go. So now when I mouse over, it's subtle, but that will change to an italic. Okay, so let's go back up to scene 1. Definitely save this again. You'll notice I save very frequently, basically after every significant change, if you will. So now we want to take that button and just embed that into a movie clip, which is where we'll create a new timeline and so on. So we highlight the button, and by going modify, convert to symbol, movie clip, what it's really doing, it's wrapping it inside of a movie clip. So it embeds it simultaneously while creating the new movie clip. And this movie clip I will call menu. So that's basically the whole content of the menu will be inside of this movie clip. So we click OK. And it might not look different on the screen, but if you look inside of your properties, it says movie clip. Again, I will save. So now, pretty well most of the rest of the work is inside of this movie clip. So let's double click it. And we're going to create the layer structure for that. Now I'm going to span this out. This will be the menu actually. And we're going to build on top of that. So I'll create a new layer here. And this is for the 3 fly out buttons, but I'm also going to have to create an invisible button. So you know what? Let me just start with that. Invisible. Okay. And I will drag that below the menu. And then come back up to menu. And create another layer. This one I'll call contact. So I'm naming them according to the names on the buttons. Contact. And I'm going from bottom to top, if you will. Video. Song. Okay, and I need one for action scripts. And that one's called actions, and I believe we put a capital on there. There we go. Again, save. And let me go back to the other example here, double click on my main menu and show you what we've got. Oh, I forgot to put in my labels, so I'll put that in as well. But basically I'm spanning over, let's say, looks like 34 frames. The idea here is that I'm going to animate each one of these guys coming in across, I think I've got it across about 7 frames there, 5 to 7 frames. And then it spans out for another, oh, maybe this is 5 frames and then another 10. We're going to do 5 and 10, just easy to remember. It sits idle from here to here. So once this keyframe is created and I have an animation, I keyframe the end frame and that holds it in. And you can see here by the yellow color that it is a motion tween. Okay, so we'll start by creating those. And I'll actually go in here and add my labels there. And then span everything out. Okay, so I'll cross over to frame 35, drag downwards, and hit F5 just to span the stuff out. And I will make some adjustments here as I go. So let's, we're going to have to create the buttons here. So I'll start with song. And I start with just my text tool. And let's see what we got here. Song. And I think I hit the key by accident. I'm actually going to put a capital on that. Song. Okay, and format that. I'll do Verdana bold. Use whatever font you want, but I would use one of these system fonts. Bold. And you know what? The size is fine at 18. It's the same size as the menu item. There we go. So we'll start it as black. Actually, you know what? I'm going to turn it gray, just so it sort of doesn't overwhelm the main menu. So under fill, let's just go to that next 33333. And now it's a dark gray. So I want to convert that to a button. Modify, convert to symbol, button, and I'll just call it song. Okay, and now I just have a button. So what I want to do is I want to animate that button across 15 frames basically. And if you notice here, the animation starts on frame 2. So we sort of have this pause waiting for the mouse over. So I'm going to start that animation on frame 2. So I can do this a couple of ways. I can actually click that frame and drag it, and it creates an empty keyframe there. And that's how I'm going to move that over. So I'm starting on frame 2. And you know what? While I'm on the topic, this is where we're going to send our playhead. So let's go into labels right now. Keyframe frame 2, because it logically makes sense. It's aligned with the first animation, if you will. So F6 on the keyboard, and then click that frame, and I'll go into my properties and give it a frame label, call it over, meaning mouse over. Hit my enter key, and you can see that appear as well. I will save here as I'm going. And now back to my button. I want to animate that, and since it's a button, meaning it's a symbol, I need to use motion tween. So I want it to fly in from, say, about here and stop right here. So I'm putting it where it will stop, and then I'm going to animate backwards. So I'm going to create my motion tween. Okay, and then go about 5 frames in, right there, keyframe that, and that's an F6. And then, actually, you know what, I want to pull this back here. I think I'm going to do it now. It may move that keyframe. We're going to find out here. Let me just drag this back to frame 16. Yes, it did. So you know what, I'm going to undo that last keyframe, and I'll move this first. So it's not a mistake. I'm just showing you what would happen if you set the length first in a motion tween or second. Because it's relative, it's trying to squish the animation if I was squishing it. So now let me go back to frame 6 once again here. Keyframe it. And you know what? I can confidently keyframe that last frame now, which will hold the animation to the end. Or hold that location, sorry. Now nothing's animating visually yet, but I just need to go back to frame 1 since I have the keyframe already. I can just highlight this button and drag it to say here. So now it animates in and then sits on screen. Now I don't want it, I want to actually have it fade while it's animating as well. So we're going to include an alpha change in our color setting. So you actually have to, while I'm on frame 1, or rather frame 2, the first keyframe of that motion tween, select it on the stage, go to color effects, alpha, set it to 0. Now I'm going to drag because it may need to be readjusted in frame 5. It does. I don't know why, but it does it across the whole span. So I'm going to go to this span, or rather this keyframe, select it on the stage and set it back to 100. And I think I probably have to do that at the end as well. Actually, it seems like it acknowledged that one. Let me just save that because these were some big steps. Okay, so scrubbing my playhead. Now when I do a mouse over here, ultimately it sends my playhead to here and plays out, and ultimately I will have a stop command right here. So why don't we do that right now? I usually save the code, but I'm going to actually put that code in right now. So I'm going to put a keyframe. And you know what? I should have gone to frame 16, but anyhow, it'll be 9 frames each. Keyframe on frame 15 in my actions layer, F6. And I'll have a stop command there and a stop command in the first one. So let's put that in now. I'm going to manually type it in. You can get it through code snippets, but it's a very simple code. STOP, empty brackets, semicolon. And I'm actually going to copy that and put that into frame 1 as well. So I'm going to highlight frame 1 on my actions layer and paste that in as well. So now I have a stop command on both frames 1 and frames 15. Save that too. So conceptually, I have the first half of that animation. Now I am, as I said, I'm working in the 2021 version. So what I'm about to show you next has to be done in this version and the 2020 version. The previous versions worked a little differently, but this will totally work in those versions too. So I would say do what I'm about to do next, regardless of which version you're working in. What I want to do next is select this motion tween, and I can go shift click on it to highlight the whole thing. Then option click to duplicate it. And I'm dragging it out just so that it's at the next available set of frames, like that. And I want to reverse this. Now this is what I was talking about. In 2019 and earlier versions, I could have right-clicked and gone reverse keyframes and it would have worked. They seem to have changed that in this newer version, which is fine. It's just a different way of working. But what we have to do now is we actually need to convert to frame by frame. And then it will allow us to reverse the frames. So let's do it that way. Keyframe each frame. So convert to frame by frame, keyframe each frame. And I just realized my menu went below the screen, but there was a reverse keyframes command in that list near the bottom. So you may not see it here either. You actually don't see it here either, but I'm going down and I'm choosing reverse frames. And it sucks that you can't see that, but that's the nature of my capture software, I guess. Now let's just confirm though that it is going backwards. And you can see it is, right? I go here, it stops, and then it comes back here. And that looks like it's paused. It is paused for those 10 or 9 frames because we are going to create kind of an upside down pyramid effect. So this one kind of sits on screen the longest as they're rolling in, because I don't want them to all come in at the same time. I want them to come in so when this one reaches its resting spot, then the next one starts. Okay, and I'm just going to save this right now again. I'm just a little bit fanatical about saving. And we'll start the next one aligned with this keyframe. So I'm going to keyframe it right here. F6. I'll create a new button with my text tool. This one will be called video. And let's just line that up there, and I'll convert that to a button. Modify, convert to symbol. Button, we'll call this one video. Oh, I hit my enter key one too many times there, which as you can see triggers the playhead. Go back here. So this is now a button. I'm going to go into it and actually give it some mouse over features. Go to the over state, F6 to keyframe, highlight it on the stage. Let me just go to the fill. I don't know if I did this on the song. I'm going to go back and check, but I want to change it to red. Okay, and let me just go back up here and double check my song. Yeah, I actually didn't do that one, but I can do it right now. No problem. So I'm going to go to the overstate, keyframe that, and highlight it on the stage and just change it to red. Okay, so now when you mouse over it, they will change colors. I'll go back up to my menu and continue with the animation here. So again, I'm going to right click on that frame, create a motion tween, then span that out to match there. So I'll go 5 frames down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and keyframe that, F6, and then keyframe the last frame, F6, come back to the first frame, and just drag that to the left, and I'm just going to align it with the beginning of the menu, and then select it on the stage, change its color effect alpha to 0, and then we need to do the correction on the next keyframe, the annoying correction, select it on the stage, set the alpha back to 100, and just scrub to make sure that it's working. You see how they sort of come sequentially? That's the idea. Okay, so now I'm going to highlight this with my shift key, option key on the Mac, alt key on the PC, click and drag. I don't know if I mentioned that the first time. It's kind of common knowledge, I think, at this point. And there we go. And now I will again convert these to keyframes and then choose the reverse frames command. So convert to frames, keyframe each frame. Now let's just see if I have that under modify, reverse frames. I don't think I do. No. Okay. Bear with me for a second here. I'm just seeing if it's available in the menus timeline. Yes, there it is right there. So just because my right click menu was getting cut off, I'm going to use this one. Timeline, reverse frames. Now it doesn't look like anything happened, but it should kind of go backwards now. And you see again sequentially. Time to save. I have one more to do, and that's really the heavy lifting for the menu. We'll put in a little bit of code and it should all work here. So the next one down is contact. So I'm going to start at this keyframe, select the frame, F6 to keyframe, and I'll create that new button with my text tool. This one was called contact. So, and it does assume the last color that I had used, so I can just leave that there. And I'm using my smart guides to line that up. Then I will convert that to a button. Button, we'll call this one contact. And these are the names you will see in your library. Okay, then I'll go into there and I'll keyframe the overstate, F6, and then I'll come back to the upstate and change it to black. So really no work is lost. It's just that it does retain the last color setting when you create another text element. Set that back to black, so now it goes black to red when moused over. Come back up to my menu. Definitely want to save that too. And now we're going to convert this to another motion tween. So I right click, create motion tween, and then I'll adjust the size before I add any keyframes. This one, it actually just stops right away on frame 5, so we'll go in there, and it's just simply one keyframe. So then I come back to that first keyframe, and with my move tool, I'll drag it back here, align it here, and select it on the stage to change its alpha settings. Under color effects, alpha down to 0, and then go to the next keyframe and change it back to 100 by selecting it on the stage, alpha 100%. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate that motion tween. Shift click on it to select the whole tween, then alt click and drag to duplicate, then right click, convert to frame by frame animation. And again, I'll use my menu at the top, but you could right click that selection of frames and choose reverse frames from your list. But as I said, I know that it's getting cut off here from the software, so I'm going to use modify timeline reverse frames. Okay, so let me just scrub through to make sure that's all working. So you see how you have sequential. First one comes in, stops, then the second one comes in, stops, then the third one comes in, stops. Stops right there. And then once we have the play command, we need to create one more button, which is our invisible button. And that needs to be isolated on this frame only. So I'm going to come down here, hit F6. Then I'm going to go to the next frame over and hit F6 again. There we go. And come back to this keyframe, and this is where I want to draw the invisible button. So really it's like water surrounding an island. So I think just bear with me, watch what I do here. I'm going to select the rectangle tool. I'm going to turn my stroke to none. And I'm just going to make the fill color a bright color so that you can see it. The color is irrelevant, by the way. It's the shape that's critical. And I'm going to start to combine some of these shapes. The idea is I want to close off around those buttons so there's no escape. If you imagine it as an island in water, there's no bridge to get out. Okay, so that's going to be the trigger, which will be a button, which will actually trigger the playhead to continue playing, and when it continues playing it goes to the end and comes back to the beginning and stops. And that's what generates the reverse animation. So let's turn that into an invisible button. Select it, modify, convert to symbol button. I'll call it invisible. Click OK. And now I need to make it invisible. So I'll go into the button by double clicking it. And the way we do that is we can highlight the contents of the up state and just drag it over to the hit state. So there should be nothing in up, over, or down, but that solid dot should be in the hit state. And if I come out of the button, it will appear as that aqua colored blue. Okay, so that's how I know I successfully turned that into an invisible button. And it's handy for you as the author so you can actually see the form, the shape, the location on the screen. Once again, time to save. Okay, we got a lot of the heavy lifting done. Now we're going to do some coding. So the concept here again is on frame 1, when I mouse over this button, it will send the playhead to this frame and play out until it confronts that stop command. So let's start by creating the mouse over feature on this button. So select the button. It needs an instance name. So I'm going to call it main menu underscore btn. All lowercase. Hit my enter key. Then with it selected, I will go to my code snippets. Under window I can find code snippets. And I'll just drag that up here as soon as my computer catches up to me. And remember, we are working with ActionScript, so go into that one. And because we're doing a mouse over, we're going to go to event handlers. And it's the mouse over event. So with that selected on the stage, we double click mouse over event, which pops in the code with some placeholder. So I want to change trace to go to and play. And inside of the quote marks, it should be the frame label. So I'm going to just, well, coincidentally, it's already there because I used the word over. So this should say go to and play over. Let's test this out. I'm going to save this and do a quick test. So I'm going on my keyboard, on the Mac command return, on the PC control return. And if I mouse over, oh, you can see here I'm cycling through the pages. So you know what, before I do anything else, let me address that. That's on the main timeline. Notice those are the labels on the main timeline. And currently we are inside of the menu. So let's temporarily go up to scene 1 here. In frame 1 of my actions, let's put in a stop command. I'm just going to type that in. Stop, empty brackets, semicolon, okay, save, and I'll do a test movie again. Okay, so now when I mouse over this, the animation should go, and because I don't have anything else, it'll go, but nothing else will happen after the submenu items reach their destination. There they go. Now they're coming in pretty fast, but it's all working. So I could either slow the frame rate down, or I could add more frames to the animation. I'm just going to leave it, but that's how you can adjust the speed. So what I want to happen now, though, is when I roll away, you see there is a button symbol right now there. When I roll away, they will go back. Okay, so that's the invisible button. So we do basically the same thing on the invisible button on frame 17. So let's go back into our menu, and we'll go up to frame 15, I guess it is here, actually. Highlight the invisible button, give it an instance name, invisible underscore btn, hit my enter key, and again, mouse over event. Double click that, and same thing here, except the command will be even simpler. It'll just be called play. It's kind of the opposite of stop. Play, empty brackets, semicolon. And that sets the playhead off to continue onto the next frame until it encounters more code. So this should give us the complete cycle. When we mouse over, the submenu items appear. When we mouse away, they should disappear. Let me just save that, and we'll do a test. Okay, mouse over, mouse away. There we go, and that's the name of the game on how to create animation that flies in, and then have the animation reverse. If you didn't want the reverse, you could have built this all in a button. But because we want that extra level of sophistication, which is the animation going backwards, the way it came in, we do it this way using movie clips and tweens and so on, and then reverse, and then duplicating the frames, reversing the frame order, and applying the appropriate code. So that's really the big story here on how to create that menu. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to close this now, and the last step is just to set up the navigation to control the route or the main timeline scene 1 from inside of this movie clip, which is something we have done before. So these are 3 buttons that are going to control the playhead on the main timeline right here. Okay, so let's go back into the movie clip. So I'm going to start with the first button called song, and we need to give them all instance names. So song underscore btn, my tab key to enter that, and I'll go to my code snippets. So I'll call those up here under window, code snippets, and we'll just drag that over here a bit, and we're working with ActionScript. So what we want to do here is simply a timeline navigation, click to go to frame and stop. But we will modify it, of course. So the code starts here, go to and stop. So we'll start just by where is it going to. I'm going to put quote marks because we're sending it to a frame label, and it's called song, and it's on the main timeline. But if you notice down here, there is no frame label called song. We actually need to tell this to go up to the root timeline, the main timeline, and execute this code. So we put a little bit of magic incantation in front of there. It's that movie clip, capital M, capital C, and brackets root, close brackets, dot. And that right there is how we can tell the code to ignore the current timeline, go up to the root timeline, which is the scene 1 timeline, and execute whatever comes after the dot. So it's going to look for this frame label on the main timeline and not on this one. Otherwise it would generate an error. So let's just collapse this for a second and give this a test. I'll save then test. Okay, so I'm just going to Command Enter on my keyboard. Alright, so when I click song, this should change the song up here. And it worked. So knowing that worked, we can comfortably go ahead and do the other 2 buttons. Okay, so we'll do that. So I'll highlight the video button. Remember, be sure you're on this frame 15 here when you're doing this. Or if you're on a different frame, make sure it's on that end frame in the middle. Okay, so instance name, video underscore btn, hit my tab key, click to go to frame and stop, double click that. Now I can copy this at this point and paste it. And I still need to modify what's in the brackets here. So this one's video. Again, naming conventions that make sense, make this a little quicker and easier. Save it. I'm just going on my keyboard to save. And I'll do a quick test on that too. Okay, so video. There we go. Song, video. We got one more to do. Okay, which is the contact button. Click to go to, actually you need to give it an instance name. If you don't by accident give it an instance name, it will prompt you to either give one or it will assign one to it. So it's actually very forgiving, if you will. It has a pretty good safety net with respect to that code. So again, contact underscore btn, make sure I spelled that correctly, which I had a sense I didn't. There we go. Hit my tab key. And the last one here, click to go to frame and stop. Again, I can copy and paste this. And just change the frame label inside of the brackets from a 5 to a quote mark with the name of the label, which is called contact. Close quote marks. Test, save and test. I'm saving and I'm testing on my keyboard. There we go. Okay, and let's give this a test here. Contact, video, and song. So there we have a fully functioning menu with sophisticated animation and reverse animation on the mouse over and the mouse away. It's actually a mouse over and invisible button, but it gives you the impression it's a mouse away. And then just the content on each keyframe inside of the main timeline is what you'll have to do on your own here. So let me just collapse this for a second. So on the song one, you will have a movie clip with a progress bar and a song. On the video, you'll have a video component. You can reuse one of the ones I included in last semester's project. And then under contact, contact is just a text element actually, just your name. So I'll put that in right here. And you notice I'm on the keyframe in the content layer. Let's see if I can spell my name right. There we go. Okay, and if you want to format that and change it, you highlight it, and so on. Okay, so that's our first assignment this year. A bit of review, but we're adding a level of sophistication in our menu by having the animation revert or go in reverse after you roll away from it. So I'm just going to save this and do one more quick test movie. Okay, here we go. Mouse is over, mouse away, animation in, animation out. And then if I click on each button, it will take me to the designated frame on the root timeline or the scene 1 timeline as it's known. Okay, so that is your assignment for today. When you're ready to hand it in, remember, don't only hand in the FLA file on this one, you must hand in the external video file as well. And I'll ask you to keep them small, so maybe using one of mine from last semester is the best idea. Okay, so that's your lesson for today, and welcome back.